I'm glad you all checked in with me tonight. Uh, Anybody got anything to say before I get started? Okay. Uh, as you know, I'm Kevin, N4XL, and I'm a big search and pounce operator and trying to figure out how to uh, match some of these guys that have these monster stations. I started looking at all the different ways in N1MM I could speed up my rate being search and pounce. And the reason I'm searching pounce is I'm only a 100-watt station with a tri-bander at 50 feet, and it was just real hard to compete with these guys that have tower 2 or 3 and uh, monobanders up there at 140, 150 feet, that kind of stuff. And I discovered that there's a lot of tools in N1MM that really helps out. And that's one of the reasons why I operate assisted with spots, is because it's simply more fun to put more cues in the log. I started out being a regular uh, old school unassisted operator, and I did okay. But I've improved my rate dramatically, as you'll hear me talk about as we go through this thing. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll take a look at different things. We're going to talk about improving rate using N1MM spot capabilities. And it isn't just for assisted. There's a couple tips on the inside of here too for unassisted ops. They've changed this around. How do I find my spotlight? I'm sorry. I don't know. How do I get rid of that? There we go. So we'll go ahead and get through this and get started. Before we get into actually using it, I'm going to wax a little bit philosophical this particular time. And one of the things I hear when I start talking about opening up all these windows on my computer is people too often say, well, I don't want to look at all that stuff. It's too distracting. I just want to focus on the entry window and putting cues in the log. Well, when I was learning to be a contester and wondering how come all these people were whooping me so badly, I was digging around through some of the old reflectors and looking at what people said and what they were doing. And I ran across this question from Pete, N4ZR. And I'm going to read his question and then the response from K5TR. And Pete wrote, until recently I was pretty much of a solitary contester. Never had any occasion to operate multi-op stations, nor to compare my results with top operators. Over the past 8 to 10 years, though, I've built a fairly capable station for the first time in my 53-year ham career. I've also had a couple of occasions to operate at multi-ops with some top operators, and I'm struck by the fact that I do not seem able to consistently get the sort of results they do, even from the same station. This is particularly the case in hell-bent contests like CW Sprints, but I have the same feeling about the first evening in sweepstakes and to a lesser extent in the big DX contests. To the extent that I can isolate the problem, I think it lies in the inability to keep myself totally focused in the moment. Even in the midst of 120 to 150 hour on CW, I find myself not always totally zoomed in on the pileup. Watching good ops, they seem to have a really special focus that I find hard to maintain, even for a 4-hour sprint. If there's anything to be done about this, I'd like to try, even though at the age of 65 I'm inevitably losing some of my edge. So I'm wondering what others have found and done about this, whether there are particular techniques that you use to help stay focused. I don't know what I'm looking for here, so any suggestions would be welcome. If you want to send them to me off the reflector, I'll summarize anonymously. Thanks. And K5TR wrote a response that really resonated with me. He wrote, there are more things than just focus and concentration. I think much of it is learned by operating many contests until most of the operating actions and techniques become second nature. It has been very interesting to me over the last few years hosting different operators here at my stations. One of the ops has been WM5R, and since he's been coming back for a number of contests year after year, I've gotten to see his operating skill evolve. When Ken did his first ARL 10-meter contest from here, there were a number of little things he was doing, or not doing, that were making an impact on his score and rate. But the one thing that really struck me was not any one operating style or error. It was that when he was running stations, that was about all he could do. He just did not have the mental bandwidth to do anything more than run stations on one radio and get them in the log. He could not think about where he should turn the antenna or answer a short question for me, or for that matter, use a second radio. Over the years, I've seen this change. Ken can now process much more information. He can use the second radio, he can answer my questions, etc. He's no longer just doing all he can to work guys and get them logged. I've seen this evolve slowly over time, and each year of the 10-meter contest he was doing a better job of operating. It was not only the mental bandwidth issue, but many things that were learned by doing contests over and over, improving his skills with each one. I still almost always learn something every time I operate a contest. George Freeman, K5TR. That resonated with me and struck me as something that I really needed to focus on. And I really thanked K5TR. I don't know if you ever heard that. It was really appreciated, but it made a tremendous improvement in my contest operating. And you'll see why I included that in this screen when I show you some of the ways that I operate my station. A lot of people think that assisted, I've heard this over and over, is nothing more than point, click, log, and then move on. That's not the case. To be competitive, you have to verify the spot accuracy by actually copying both the call and the exchange. Remember that if you get the call wrong in just about every contest, you ended up getting penalized, not only losing that points for that QSO, but you also get penalized sometimes 2 and 3 times what that QSO was worth. Search and pounce ops must sometimes run. They can't always search and pounce, and runners must sometimes search and pounce. And forget spots, and you got to turn the VFO to find stations that haven't yet been spotted. Just about every time I reach for the VFO, even though we got this thing called the reverse beacon network that spots everybody calling CQ on CW or RIDI. I only do CW, don't do RIDI, and I do sideband too. But every time I grab that VFO, I find stations that haven't been spotted yet. Gary, W9, I can't see the top, I think it's XT, whatever. Watch the rate meter. He wrote that in a presentation about this. When rate's below what it should be, change from CQ to search and pounce or vice versa. Change bands. We'll talk about in this how you might make a decision on that. Or take a break. You got to be careful with that though. Make sure it makes sense operationally, that you're not giving up a chance when, say, Europe sunrise is coming. That's not a good time to take a break. But it's good advice for all categories. This is an info window that not everybody that uses N1MM has open. I've gone to stations, multis, before, and they don't have this info window open, and I think it's one of the greatest tools that N1MM has. You've got a section right here which talks about the how many queues in the last 10 minutes, how many queues in the last 100 minutes, how many queues in the last 60, or excuse me, not minutes. The last 10 queues was done at a 99 an hour rate. The last 100 queues was done at a 63-hour rate. And then your hourly rate and how far it's been within that hour. It's been 54 minutes, and I put 56 queues in the log. I used to always focus on that, but this thing is much more useful. It gives you a feel over time. This thing advances slowly. It moves from right to left, and you get a chance to see I'm increasing rate, I'm decreasing rate, and then rate sharply decreased. That is much more useful to me than this section over here with the numbers. And there's some other things in here too. I won't talk about them because we're talking about rate. This is a snapshot of one particular time. I got 190 queues an hour. I put the last 10 queues at 190 an hour. The last 100 were only 67 though. And what happened here, if you look over at this particular one, I was search and pouncing over that, then I was running, and then I shifted to search and pounce again. What's the definition of a clear frequency when you're search and pounce? I've heard many times your new run frequency. Well, I found a clear frequency, started running, but my rate dropped. So I went back to search and pounce again. And that's what that shows right there. This is my window on my desktop. I operate single operator 2 radio, so there's another band map here and another Multi Q window over here, and most people find that very intimidating. And they think, boy, how do I keep track of all this stuff? Well, remember that thing about mental bandwidth. That's why I mentioned that in this particular thing, because that can be a little bit intimidating, and a lot of people get overblown by that. But as you develop some of that mental bandwidth, this becomes less intimidating and easier to use. This is the band map for N1MM, a lot of similar to other different types of things. And this is going a little bit slow on my computer here for some reason. You get spots from your cluster. You'll have to figure out what the cluster is best for you. That's beyond the scope of this talk. But they get dumped into N1MM unless you filter them, and we'll show how you can filter them in N1MM a little bit later. But a lot of them have command sets, and it's better for you to filter them at the cluster, give the commands direct to the cluster, and limit how many spots the cluster sends to you. Load your processor down less, and you have less glitches in your system. Especially, that's important, especially if you've got an older system. And some of the clusters you go to, I was wondering why I wasn't getting any spots for a while. Turns out that the cluster I'd selected by default blocked all the RBN clusters. So you may have to tell the cluster to turn on the RBN to start sending you spots and make it useful. You also, besides getting things from the cluster, and this is where unassisted operators can use some of these tips, you can put your own calls that you run across on the band map yourself. Or you can run a skimmer and feed your own, but then you're assisted again. And if you put a call in the entry window, you can hit Alt-O, and it'll dump it in here and look just like one of these spots over on the side. Or there's also a little selection you can say that within N1MM, if you put something in your entry window and you can't work the station, can't bust the pile up, or it's just too weak, whatever, if you search and pounce and you move your VFO, it'll automatically move it from your entry window and put a spot there so you know it's there and can come back to it. That's not assisted operation because it's the same thing as if you run across somebody without any spots coming in at all, and you jot down their call and frequency on a piece of paper. This just does the same thing, except it puts it on the band map. And if it's on the band map, you'll see how we can use that later on. And that's pretty much just what I just got done saying there. In N1MM is the telnet window, and we just had somebody a month or two back on our reflector was talking about getting overloaded by all these spots from people in like Europe or the other side of the U.S. that people say, oh, I hear this guy. Well, it doesn't do us any good. We can't hear him. Propagation is not such that we can hear him here in South Carolina. So on that telnet thing, you click a filters tab, you can tell it to only give me spots that are being sent from people or stations in zone 3, 4, and 8 of the U.S. Or you can say all the U.S. or you can say all of North America. Now some different programs allow you to filter things even more detailed at the cluster level, or third-party software you can tune it. But knowing this right here can cut down dramatically on the amount of unworkable spots you're getting. Because we're going to talk about jumping from spot to spot later, and if the spots you're getting are from places you can't hear, it's wasted time. Some thoughts about the band map. I used to just use the band map alone and didn't think it'd do me any good to use some of these other features. But I've got a Yagi. Some of you may have directional antennas too. And one bad thing about the band map is the spots are not sorted by direction. Here you got one at 120 degrees, 16 degrees, 223. and you can jump from place to place, but if your Aggie's pointed the wrong way, that doesn't necessarily do any good. Sorry about some of these being black. Like I say, my program's acting up a little bit. You can navigate through these spots on the band map by either clicking on the spot, just going over there and clicking, or you can use keyboard shortcuts like Control up down arrow will jump to the next spot, or Control Alt up and down will jump to the next mult on the band map. Sometimes you get spots on there you don't want, like there's some busted spots. You can hit click on it and then just touch it and hit Alt D, or you can move your mouse over the top of it and push the center wheel of the mouse and it'll make it go away as well too. The thing about spots is you can't trust those little buggers. If you do, you're setting yourself up for those penalties and not logs all the time. Never trust a spot. I took a snapshot of this screen years back, and it was during an actual contest I was in. And you look up here and you can see that all these three stations are on 7036.1, RU1A, RA1A, RM1A. If you just clicked on one of them, you got a 1 in 3 shot that you clicked on the right spot. So got to figure out which one it is. Remember I said you have to listen to the call and check the exchange. Here's another one. You got all pretty close to 7038. You might get excited. In this contest, green means a double mult. So you click on W7RH and work somebody without hearing the call. Well, it might have been this is blue. You already got that mult. So that would have been worth a lot less points for you instead of working your double mult. And here again, 7038.4, and which one of these was I going to talk about? Two of them are mults and one of them's a double mult, same type thing. The other thing I was going to mention when I'm on this screen is these two right here, KM3T, the hash marks mean it came from a skimmer, and you got a second skimmer on KM3T-2, so the same station, KM3T, put in two different spots, copied them differently. So you just can't trust them goobers. K3LR is a traditional spot that gets busted. In Morse code, R is did. So sometimes the skimmers and stuff picks up that last did of the R and thinks it's supposed to be in front of the K for K3LR, so it goes DIT, which is an EK3LR. So a lot of times you'll see EK3LR and think you're working some fancy mult somewhere that you never had a chance to work before. I forget the country, but it's really just a busted spot. And that comes up over and over and over a lot, things like that. So there is an ability to blacklist things in N1MM, and you can call it up and put in there, like I said, if the call sign EK3LR comes up, ignore it. That's my bad spot call. P5NY, I forget what that would have been, but they were coming up with saying North Korea was on the bands a lot, and I got tired of seeing that pop up all the time, so I put him in a busted packet spot thing. PJ2T was the actual call. That was coming out as GJ2T, but be careful what you write in here, because there might actually be a legitimate call out there, WR1IT. It actually, I was being sent WR1ST. There might actually be a WR1IT out there, and if you blacklist them, you'll never turn up in your spots. This window right here is what most successful high-scoring contesters that I know use more than the band map. If you haven't heard about it, you need to spend some time rooting around in the manual about it, the available mult and queue window. And this thing does quite a bit. We'll talk about some of the details. You can only show mult spots, which is selected right now, and if you click that, it'll show all spots, whether they're mults or not, and it only shows you stations that you haven't worked before. So that's a good thing to have. It doesn't show, dupes don't show up inside of there. And you can select bands and modes. We'll talk about that in a minute or two more. But the other thing that's useful here is this section in the middle. And all the spots that come in go into a little table in N1MM, and it fills out this little chart. And right now what it's telling you is of all the spots that it's seeing, there are 2 molts on 80, 2 molts on 40, only 1 molt on 20, and 1 on 15. Now, all the cues that are there that are workable, there are 16 cues there on 80, 12 on 40, and 25 on 20. So you can kind of judge, and the red highlighted number red mean that's the greatest cues or the greatest molts. You got 2 on 80 and 40 in red because it's the same number. If there was a 3 on 80, then just 3 on 80 would be red. But you got to think about propagation and what's going on as you evaluate this. I use this, I look at it, and let's say we're going from afternoon to evening, and we're at the high spot of the sun cycle, so there's a lot of activity on 20 at night. But you can kind of judge it. 80 and 40 are just beginning to open up. So what I might want to do, rather than just jumping onto 80 and 40 right away, is pick up that one molt that's still on 20 before 20 shuts down, or try to work several cues real quick before 20 shuts down, and then make my move to 40 or 80. And the other way to look at this is if you are in the middle of the night and you see you've got 2 molts on 80 and 40 and dawn's beginning to crack, or your early morning, and you see now you can see that 20 is starting to open up, you may want to pick up those molts on 80 and 40 and then switch over to 20. So that's how you can use that information in there. This molten Q window, assisted molten Q, has several different columns in it that you can use, and you can click on these and sort it to put the newest molts on top, which is how most people, when I was learning, use this. And still to this day, you talk about people with this capability to say, oh, I want to have the molts on top, the newest stations on top, so I can get to them before it gets a whole big pile up. Well, there's an advantage to that, but there's a couple other ways to use this too. Before I get to that, you got a Yagi. You can sort this by direction, and then you can point to your Yagi. In this case, it'd be out west towards a little bit northern California, and you can just point it right at California, go down and hit all these spots, and about the time you get up to maybe 320 degrees, the station's spotted at 320, you might move your Yagi a few degrees and then work the ones that you can get with 320, and or vice versa. So it's not necessarily all the time you're going to want to get the newest spots on top. Directional antennas work. What if a new spot pops up that you want to get to right away, but you got to spend all this time spinning your antenna to get to it, and then you got to spin it back. A lot of wear and tear that you don't necessarily want to do. So that's another thing you can do with this. And you can jump from spot to spot on this assisted molten Q list by using Alt-A or Shift-Alt-A. So once you bring this up and you get this sorted the way you want it to do, all you got to do is hit Alt-A and you'll jump to the next spot, jump to the next spot, or go the other way, up and down. And there's a key combination to only jump to molts too, but you don't really need it because all you got to do is go up there and click that molts and Qs, and then only molts will be on the list, and you can just hit Alt-A instead of trying to twist your fingers and do that fancy combination. Now I skipped over a screen here. That was this one again. Click on that to just show molts or available molts. Another thing I do that I haven't heard of anybody else doing actually is I've got a tri-bander, and it is essentially a multi-band antenna. If you've got a trap dipole, or if you've got a multi-band vertical, something that doesn't use a tuner when you shift to it, I just go ahead with my Yagi. I line these up so that they're all, in this case, so the directions are all the same, and then it doesn't matter what band they are. Any station off in that direction that's a spot from my area will be in a sequence here. And then since I got a tri-bander and my radio knows that when it doesn't care once I shift frequency from 20 meters to 10 meters to back to 15 meters, it's almost like an automatic antenna switching system, and I can just go down boom, 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 boom. It doesn't matter what band these things are on. I can still use this thing we're going to talk about, jumping from spot to spot. So that worked out very well for me. I don't use a tuner on my antennas, which helps. And I've got single operator 2 radio, so I have automatic antenna switching. So what ends up happening is within about a quarter second, third of a second, when I make a jump to the next station, my automatic antenna switch does the same thing as if I was using multiband antennas. So that works out really well. You might think that if you got just a regular dipole or something that directional wouldn't be of much use. But if you've got a receive antenna like a Beverage or a K9 AY loop, I went for a couple of years not thinking, well, hey, I can just point my Beverage in that direction, and then I will sort this assisted molten Q list by direction, and then I don't have to worry about switching my Beverage back and forth either. So that's another usage you can have if you're using omnidirectional antennas. I like to keep this thing open here, and I used to do it so that I could just look at spots only for my particular band that I was on. You can click up here, only show me spots from my focus radio. So even though I've got all these spots here from all these bands, if I click and say only show me spots from the focus radio, it will only show me the ones for whatever band I happen to be on at the time. And when I shift bands, this automatically updates and gives me the spots that it is on the next band. It used to be that they only had one of these if you do single operator 2 radio or single operator 2 VFO. They now have a separate AM and Q window for each VFO or each separate radio. And you can set them up separately and track them that way. Very useful. If you aren't getting any spots, by the way, this bites people. There are actually 3 places you can filter spots, and one of any of the 3 can mess you up. You can tell the cluster itself by sending a command straight to the cluster, something like only give me spots from sideband spots that come in, or only give me spots from that are CW spots. And then you go to a sideband contest, and all of a sudden you don't get any spots coming in from the cluster. It's because you didn't tell the cluster that this contest you want to change them. Or we'll look at the telnet window. We looked at the telnet window back a while before. There's also a thing on there that says show me spots from just CW, or show me spots only from sideband, whatever. And then we got this thing, which is here in the AM and Q window, where you can check and say only show me spots from these particular modes too. Any one of them 3 can make it so you don't get spots. I've been bit by that more than once. This is N1MM's band scope, and I didn't think a band scope was all that useful either. My TS590 does not have a band scope in it, and I knew you could rig them up so that you could get a band map from it, but I never thought, or excuse, band scope from it, but I never thought that was worthwhile. But after I discovered what I'm about to show you, yes, you definitely want a band scope if you're trying to find stations and increase your rate. Now this seems pretty simple to use. You'd be able to move from place to place, and you can do that either by just clicking on the section right here, and that green is essentially where you're receiving, your radio is receiving. You click there and it'd jump, you click there, it'd jump, whatever. And that seems relatively easy to use, but this is what it actually looks like in a big contest. And how do you figure out what's going on inside of there? You actually can take this, and I'll show you when I start doing a demonstration of N1MM in a minute or two. You can grab onto a corner of this and drag it and make this be a vertical display, and instead of all these going up and down, they go off right and left, and makes that easier to see. But this type of horizontal section fits better on my desktop for me, so I don't like the vertical section, and I don't care what that looks like. Why? Because because this blue line right here does something for me. Every signal that's above that blue line that is a station I have not already worked, like K9NR is what that station is, and I haven't worked K9NR. Every station that I haven't worked that has a top signal strength above that blue line, N1M can put a little red dot there. And here you can see that's above that line, but there's no red dot. That's because I've worked that station. It was W6SX. And that becomes useful. You can make that blue line go up and down with the mouse wheel on your mouse so that you can filter out stations that are too weak to work, or if it's really crowded and you can only hear stations that are above a certain level. So you can move that up and down and you can change how many red dots appear. But then N1MM has a shortcut. So if like your frequency is here, you can tell it hit a key combination, it'll automatically jump to the next red dot and then automatically jump to the next dot. Do it again, it'd skip over these because there's no red dots and it'd find the next one off screen over there. Very handy to have. And once I figured that out, I say that a band scope integrated into N1MM is very useful to have. I'll drop a name here, Bill, N4IQ, you know him from the Swamp Fox people. Used to use his own external band scope software, and I have to admit, he said it's easier for me to see, and I have to admit it is, and it's more versatile, but it doesn't allow this red dot jumping from place to place. And even though it's a little harder for him to see and use by now, Bill has switched over to using this all the time. And when you use this red dot way of jumping back and forth, I don't care what that looks like at all. Other thing about this is you can set the decay speed of these signals as they go down. They can either be fast, so as soon as they stop talking it drops right away, or you can set the decay speed to be slow. I want mine to be slow so that that signal stays above the blue line all the time and keeps those red dots there. So I always set mine to slow. Oh, you can also use this when unassisted. It will look at the stations you have in your log or the stations you have on your band map, and it will not put a red dot over any of those stations that you've already worked. So even if you're not getting spots, you can use this method to jump from place to place. It's unassisted operation. Oops. Here's another little trick. You're tuning across with a VFO and you run across Billy Bob on his farm out west, and he's talking with Joe Bob, and they're not in the contest. And every time you tune across with your VFO, you run across them and you hear somebody talking and you stop and you listen to see who they are if you've worked them before. Well, rather than keep tuning across those two, you can hit Alt-M and it'll put busy right there in your band map. So as you tune across on the band map, this blue line goes up and down. You can say, oh, I can just skip over that. Now that's not always true, because they may have ended their QSO and some other contester may have taken it over. But the odds are pretty good that next time you tune across it, they'll still be there. So it'll decay away after a few minutes anyway. So next time you go through, you'll find a way to check whether they're still there. I want to give a check window demonstration here. So I am going to close out of this. Let me go back and minimize this. And we're in N1MM here a little bit. And I thought I had a printout of things. Evidently I didn't print it. Let me bring this file up a minute. Did I save it? Yeah, there we go. Check window demonstration. Alright. What I want to talk about here is this super check partial list. Now if you're doing file and you're setting up your contest, there's this tab called associated files. If you give it a master super check partial, you can set it up for either around the world, or this one's just giving me US and Canadian calls. You can get different ones of these, But if you assign a SuperCheck partial file name to this thing, it's very helpful to have, and assign it a call history file name for calls that have been used in that particular contest before. You can do a lot of different types of things with this. I'll cancel out of this. This window right here is called the check log, and if I type a call in there like N4XL, you can see all kinds of different things start popping up on the inside of here. I'm going to delete my call so it's not so bad here. If you move this across, this first section says shows matching calls from your log. So anybody I've worked is going to appear in this section. This shows matching calls from the master SuperCheck partial. In this case, I've got it set up to show me US and Canadian calls that have been in recent contests. And by that I think it's for like the last 3 months or last year or something like that. This screen shows matching calls that are coming in on my Telnet feed, which my Telnet feed is this right here. I've got it up on another monitor. And then this shows calls that are in the call history file. And we're not going to worry about that. And we'll talk about reverse lookup in a minute. So as we're typing here, see you run across a call, and the call you run across is AA3. And you can't quite get the last letter. Well, what this shows up here is I have worked AA3B before. And the green means the next letter could be a B. If it is, I've already worked that guy. I've also worked AA3R, and I've also worked AA3S. It could also be one of these other type of guys. So let's go ahead and see what happens if I actually figure out it's AA3B. Well, boom. All of a sudden, it tells me that I've worked AA3B before, but because it's blue, I haven't worked them on this band. If it was gray, AA3R is who that guy is. His is gray, so I've worked him on this band and I can't work him. Over here in the master thing, it shows me all the other calls this could be. If there's another letter after AA3B, for example, it might be one of these guys, CKS. It's a little harder for you to see, DOT. Now how you would use that, if you hear there's another letter and you think it was maybe an S, you could say, in your running, you could say, is that Alpha Alpha 3 Bravo Sugar? Or Alpha Alpha 3? You can guess like that and kind of help out. Now, some say that's cheating. This is where I get into my philosophy a little bit here in a minute. And it's allowed by the rules. And if you're trying to win, contesters are always trying to win, and you're not using that tool and your competition is, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So yeah, it may be considered a little bit different than what old school was, but again, it's allowed, and if you don't do it, some of your other competition is, you've got to overcome that tool that they're using that you're not. So that's one way to do it. Let's look at this AA3 again. You hear AA3, you can't figure out that letter, but then you hear C. This shows you in the SuperCheck partial, it could be AA3RC or it could just be AA3C. If you heard something C, you know it's most likely going to be RC. Now these are only people that are active contesters. It could be somebody who's not in many contests, but this tells you a lot about if you got the right call or not. It's something you got to get used to checking a little bit. What do I mean by check? Well, if you type in a call and there's a check mark there, what that's telling you is that's a valid call that has been used in a contest for, I think, the last 3 months or last year. So it's very good to, whenever you type a call in, look at that check. That's one way to ascertain that you probably have the right call. If I did AA3Z, notice it's a question mark. AA3Z is not an active contester that's been recently contesting. So you might want to say, wait a minute, was that a Z or was it something else? So you might say, was that Alpha Alpha 3 Zulu? And they'll come back and say, no, it'll be something else. So that's one way you can do this. You also can do this with a reverse lookup. Say you're tuning across a station in the NAQP and you hear Ed, South Carolina, but you don't hear the guy's call. Well, that happens to me all the time. So what I do is I write the exchange down, and then I hit tab, and looky here. There's a K7OM, used to be in Edna, South Carolina. K3DNE could be him, or WB4HRL. Those are the people in the master call his master super check partial that are Eds in South Carolina. So when you hear he goes on the next thing, and all you hear is a 3, well, you know it's K3DNE, most likely, unless it's somebody else. And I happen to have worked him, so it tells me he's a dupe. So that's how you can use a call history normally. You can also do this. Let's say in the name you hear EC, and that's all you hear. Well, reverse history says there are 2 people in all of the U.S. and Canada who have their name with an E and a C in it. That's N2YNF or KB4LOA. That really helps you narrow down who the call might be. And I will go ahead and wipe that. And the third way I'll talk about it is all you hear is the call DNE. All of a sudden, boom, you see in this case there are really only one person in all the U.S. and Canada that's been using DNE for quite a while. Very useful. You need 3 letters, so if it's DNO, well, there's only one, KA9DNO. Very useful thing to have, that super check partial. And the last one I'll do is, let's say we have Dave is a name. Well, there's about 1 billion Daves, so that doesn't really do very much more. Well, let's say at the beginning you hear WN4. Oops. Well, you would think AFP, but look, there are other Daves that are WN4s that have been contesting too. So you can try to figure that part of it out. But there's only one in the reverse lookup. So it could very well be that, because I've already worked him and knew who he was. Very useful tool to have. Any questions on this before I go on? Okay, let me bring this presentation back. Where is it? There it is. I'll keep going from this slide. So here we talked about what happened here is I clicked on a spot, W9XS. It got brought into the entry window, got a check mark. So W9XS is probably a good call, and I would verify it, hear what he says, and I would verify the rest of the exchange. But that's how that part works. Now the next one is W9ZN. I clicked on that call, first part, brought it over to the entry window, and the second check to make sure I got the right call is that. In this case it says W9ZN is not an active contester. So I look up here and I worked W9NZ, not ZN, W9NZ on another band. ZN's a question mark. I worked W9NZ on another band, but there's also a W9ZR. There's a W9NZ, not really, because that's probably a bad call. W9AN. So there's all those different ones that you can look at. And that's a good way to verify. You can pay extra close attention when the guy gives his call, when he's talking. Was your call W9ZN? And he'd probably come back and say, no, the call is Whiskey 9 November Zulu. So just get used to doing that as a step automatically. And that's where we talk about bandwidth. You look at this, you get used to doing this over and over and over. As you enter the guy's call, there's a question mark. Immediately look up and see if you can find any matching letters, and immediately you know to pay closer attention to what his call is. That's some of that mental bandwidth and how you pay attention and focus what's going on. Now, we mentioned there are these different shortcuts, and you all know about them, I'm sure. Click on different things to jump here and there, or market frequency busy. In one of the earlier things, I gave a shortcut display for all kinds of other things you can do in N1MM. Well, as I was sitting in the chair after one particularly 48-hour contest, and I got up to about the 28, 30-hour time frame, I noticed that my fingers were hurting, and I said, "What the heck? All this typing?" Well, I started paying attention, and what it was from was twisting my fingers into knots to do all these little shortcuts. And if you just do the shortcuts now and then, one, you got to remember what they all are, but that's not always easy to do. But two, if you do it for operate only for maybe 6, 8, 10 hours, your fingers can probably handle that just fine. What I decided to do is find out an easier way to do it. What I use now is a Stream Deck, and these are a single push button. Like this thing here says R1, jump to the next spot, and that's for my radio 1. That's for radio 2, jump to the next spot. I can do other things like send the F keys from here, and I use this changes. This is the one I had most recently set up for single operator 2 radio. You can also send radio commands instead of taking your hand off the keyboard and going through menus on your radio to get to a function or holding a button in. Sometimes you got to figure out, do I tap it or do I got to hold it in for a second for that feature to take effect? I just hit these single buttons. Like if I click this button, it shifts my CW filter to 200 hertz. Otherwise, I got to reach over and turn a knob and make sure I get to the right number. Or this one automatically jumps to 300 or 80. And these things, I got a problem with my 590s, both of them. As I call CQ, my carrier level changes, and that affects the signal strength going out and people hearing me. So I keep an eye on my carrier level, my ALC level, and have to adjust my carrier level to keep my ALC up high enough. So that requires going into a push button and then turning a knob and then clearing that push button setting. I do it all with a single button. But this allows you to put all those shortcuts and stuff into a single button push. You also can do it, that's what I was using before I got a Stream Deck. This is a gaming keyboard, and I've got these programmable keys over on the side right there, right next to the keyboard, real easy to reach. And this one is a button I push to go Multi Q window, AM Q window, jump up, jump down, and that's bottom there, the screen band scope, jump up to the next red dot or down to the red dot. These are for other things, whatever I want them to be. They can be moved around from contest to contest. Now another thing that N1MM has in it, if you don't want to go to either the Stream Deck or the other, say you don't use the insert key very much, there's a reason why you would, or say you enter numbers off the top row here instead of the keypad over here, and you never use the 5 button or the 4 button. N1MM has a key in there to program those keys with an auto hotkey function, so you could do the same thing as these macros of the Stream Deck by pushing one of these. You map it out with an auto hotkey function. I use these a lot because in work I used to enter numbers with these all the time, so I always enter my numbers that way. But there's a couple ways you can do to speed things up. And especially when you get tired after you've been doing it for hours and hours and hours, it cuts down on the amount of fatigue by you fat fingering the wrong button or having to remember the key combination. Some other tips about contesting. That was pretty much it for jumping. Don't forget the VFO. Getting there first is the best way to beat the pileup. Again, every time I grab a VFO and I start tuning it, virtually every time I'll run across some station, even in CW, that's not been spotted. And essentially I'm the first one there, the second one there, and go ahead and get them before the big pileup starts. It's a good way to get extra mulch in your log. What I do typically to tie some of these things together, I will go to a band. I will click that button in the AMQ window to only show me mults, and I will then use one of them buttons to jump to the mult. I'll have it filtered correctly, push the button and jump to the next mult in the AMQ window, work that person, and then hit the next one. I'll make a couple, 3 passes through just getting mults. Then I'll go ahead and open that up to show me all mults and Qs, and I'll make 1 or 2 passes that way. Then I'll go ahead and look at the band scope, jumping from red dot to red dot. And then once I get done doing that, I'll focus on the VFO and go through the band that way. So you can pretty well cover working a band out using that method to go through everybody. And the other thing is if you're running and all of a sudden you see your rate drop off and you know propagation's still there, stations are still very strong and everything like that. Remember I showed you how you could have filters so you're only getting spots from K3, 4, and 8. By the reason I do 8, include that in there, even though the far north of us, is I've found that a lot of times the people in Ohio and West Virginia, if they spot somebody, the odds are real good we can hear them too. But if you're filtered to only show spots for zones 3, 4, and 8, open it up and look at the world, and you may find out that there's some U.S. station that has just moved into your frequency or is in your skip zone, and you're duking it out with them, so you might consider moving. And then go back to filtering for only spots you can hear. N1MM has a feature where you can tell that the contest to change the mode on your radio and only accept go back and forth. So you want to look at the contest mode, and I will go ahead and reduce this a minute and we'll take a look at what that is in N1MM. Config, ports, mode control. You can tell it to use the radio mode, which is default, meaning if you have your radio in CW, it'll stay in CW. Now sometimes if you jump up in frequency to sideband, it'll automatically shift to sideband, but not always. So if you jump to a sideband frequency and you're in radio mode and it didn't change, you're still in CW, that can mess you up when you're contesting. You can tell it to follow the band plan, which your band plan, let me move this out of the way, is in here. I can't get to it right away. Anyway, there's a space you can get into with band plan, and sometimes you'll try to be doing a CW contest and you'll go, I think it's above 060, and it'll say, okay, now you're in a digital place, and all of a sudden your recorded mode won't be the same. So I don't like using band plan all the time. Use contest mode or band plan, one or the other, and use the contest mode or radio mode. I often use that particular one. And get back here to this and open that up again. So that can cause you problems sometime if you're got the wrong mode. And some spots, if you click on a spot, it'll be set up to go to set your receive on one frequency and your transmit on another, split. And I'm glad that's there sometimes, particularly on 40, because it works well. But unfortunately, sometimes people manually put the spot in, or maybe the computer screws up. So you'll go ahead and click on a station, and it's well within your operating frequency of the U.S., and it'll put you in split mode anyway, so you're transmitting somewhere else. Not a good thing to have happen. So I've taken as part of that situation awareness and bandwidth, mental bandwidth thing, I try to look over at what my frequency is after going on a spot period periodically and see if I can put in a spot. John, would you mute your mic?
Sure.
Thank you. And the other thing I mentioned, we're almost done here. I think it's a great idea to spot everybody that you've worked, and you can do that by Alt-P. And some people don't do that. They say, I don't want to give my competition, let them know where this rare mult was. Well, I think it's just good sportsmanship. Is how I was raised. So after I work somebody, I'll hit Alt-P and let everybody else know where he's at too. Particularly in sideband contests, I wish more people would do Alt-P and just get used to doing it all the time. Or there's a button right below your entry window where it says spot. That's all you got to do is click spot and let them know that I'm there. Good thing to do, and it helps you too if people spot you. And I end this with a little bit of philosophy again. And these are two things that have stuck with me and helped me improve as a contester. The best of the best gain their winning edge practicing the basics over and over in numerous forgettable events, often using inadequate radios and second-rate antennas. Discovering how to overcome such obstacles are lessons never forgotten. Absolutely. That was from a National Contest Journal profile, N6RO. And then KR0Y. With experience comes knowledge and cunning. I can't stand here and tell you the secrets, as many of them are second nature to me now. I can't emphasize enough how important that bit about second nature is. And to give you a clue, I don't know if you can remember back, all of us have got white hair, or nearly white hair on this talk here tonight. But if you think back to when you were learning to drive a car, and you sat down, you had the driver ed teacher next to you, or your dad, or whoever the case was, and you had to turn the wheel, turn a corner. Uh, you were probably pretty nervous, and you're trying to think, well, I got to adjust the throttle a little bit. I've got to turn the wheel, not too much, and all this. And you spend a lot of time thinking just about how to turn that corner. Now you don't think about it at all. You turn the corner, and not only you're turning the corner, you can look over to the side and see what the people are doing the other way. Are the cars, anybody going to run into you? You look over down the road you're headed to. Are there any dangers? You don't think about the stuff you do in a car anymore. It's all second nature. And you can listen to the radio. You can talk to somebody. You can look off at the tree on the side, not run off the road. That's a perfect example of mental bandwidth and how it can help out in contesting. But you don't get that way unless everything you do in a contest is second nature. Once you do, it frees you up to look at all the other things and start saying, hey, how's my rate doing in this info window? Do I need to worry about making a jump to 15 meters because it looks like there's other spots popping up on there? All those things become second nature, and your scores are going to jump exponentially once you get to that point where things are second nature. And I haven't said so to Dave, WN4AFP, but I gave him this talk for a way to improve contesting a long time ago, and hardly anybody picked up on that second nature thing. His scores have improved dramatically over the years, and he's such a great CW op and stuff like that. But it was about, I don't know, about a year ago in one of his posts, he says, yeah, that second nature thing, it's got to be second nature. He's picked up on it, and his scores are starting to improve as well. If you pay attention to people who knows what's going on, they don't have to think about it, they just do it. And that's what KR0Y meant. It's all second nature to him. He can't really tell you because he just does it now. It works for him. Any questions? Okay, Jim, you came in the end. Where did you pick up at?
I have a question if
Oh, Kevin, I just wanted to say I came in about 20 minutes. It's been quiet all day, and I got a phone call at 6:58 that I had to take. And
Right.
I saw your email to me, and I just told the guy I've got to leave. I'll call you back later. So probably
Well,
20 minutes into your talk. So thank you, and
if
especially
you hold on, we'll go over the beginning again when all these people are done if you want.
that'd be fine. And I've
Okay.
got some time, Kevin.
Great. Who had a question? Somebody had a question?
yeah, I have a question. You know, I've been principally an N3FJP user. I've used N1MM several times. How do you self-spot?
Yeah, let me get back over here again and share, and we will make this go away. There's a couple ways to do it. One is up here in this button. N1MM has a macro called Spot Me, and you can program these buttons right here. I label mine Spot Me as it shows right there. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's my dog's barking, and I just didn't want it to interrupt.
Okay, no, I lost everything that says Zoom, so I didn't know. All right, so there's a thing here that says little brackets, Spot Me, close brackets, and I labeled the button Spot Me, which is what this is right here. And I also got Split to put me in and out of Split. So all I'd have to do then is if I'm here and I've got a frequency, just go up and click that. And let me bring this, okay, the info window's right here. It should pop up there. Spot Me, self spot only in run mode, okay? So I go to run mode and Spot Me. Boom. I did that. You also, I believe, can put that in an F key on your keyboard, but I use all my F keys normally, so I just set it up that way. So again, go up here to this band map, those four blank buttons, right click on one of the blank buttons, and put that macro in there. Another way to do it, if you don't want to do all that, is simply type your call in the call field and then go down here on the thing that's it and click spot, and you'll be spotted.
All right, that's easy. So it's if I go to the band map where you have it for spot me, is that macro in there already, or do I have to
No,
put?
you got to put it in.
Okay, and where do I find it?
It's in the N1MM manual about spots, about macros, and look up spot me, and it'll tell you how to do it. But I'll go ahead and take a snapshot of this and blow it up a minute so you can write it down too. I think I can blow this up. No, this won't let me blow it up. There we go.
Okay, I just took a screenshot of it, so I got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kevin.
And again, all you got to do is right click on those. One other hidden secret for just about everything in N1MM, like I talked about all these different windows here, if you right click this screen, you can uncheck the panes you don't want to use. And there are other options. Every single place in here, like over at the band map, right click on it, and there's all kinds of options pop up in there too. Same with the entry window. So sometimes just go exploring and right click everywhere.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
And this is Ron. The window that's in the upper left-hand corner of the screen underneath the little recording flag. Tell me about that again, briefly.
This one right here?
That's the one.
Okay. What this is the info window. Let me see if I can enlarge it. Will it let me? No, it won't let me enlarge it. I'm going to go back into my presentation, if you give me a second, and we'll move back to that slide. All right. This is a blow up of it, and it doesn't have the white down at the bottom, which tells you when you've been spotted and all that kind of stuff. If you're interested in the white, I'll have to go back and do that a different way. But there are two main sections to this particular window that you will use. This right here looks at the last 10 cues and the last 100 cues you've done and tells you how fast you put them in your log. I put the last 10 cues in the log at 190 an hour rate. The last 100 cues, I put them in the log at a 67 per hour rate. In the last 60 minutes or hour, I did 68 cues an hour. And then this just shows how many minutes into the hour you were at. So you can get a feel for the bar on these bars as to how fast you're doing back and forth. Now I have had, using the search and pounce jump methods that I'm using, that bar has been up to like 225 before by jumping from spot to spot to spot. And I've kept it over 130 or so for about 15 minutes. A couple times I have had an hourly rate simply doing search and pounce of over 100 an hour. Usually I can get 70 to 80 an hour easy in doing this search and pounce method. So it's very useful. So that's one thing here. But if you start watching this green bar go up and down, you think you're doing really good because heck, that's 190. But it was only down here about 67 or so when I was running. So I stopped watching this green pretty much. Your eye's drawn to that. But this one tells you a lot more. What it does is give you a trend line. And I don't know what these time increments here are, but this, whatever's here, this level blue would start marching across the screen. So what this tells me is as I was operating, my trend was going up the whole time. It wasn't fluctuating as fast as this 190. And then when I switched to search and pounce, I thought I was doing pretty good because this was staying up there pretty high, but in actuality, my trend line was moving down. So I decided, hey, I was doing much better search and pounce. So I shifted back to search and pounce, and you can see the trend line started going up again. So that's how I use this. In this window is some other information. It tells you what OK was. It was Czechoslovakia. The call was OL8M, and that N4XL spot limit such and such a time. It gives me the zone, my beam heading, and it talks about sunrise and sunset, and all that tells me what the local space weather is as well. So all that's in there. This is the call of whoever's operating. If you're at a multi like K4, what is it, NDX right now, it would have K4NDX there rather than the operator call sign of N4XL. And this last QSO tells you how long it's been since the last time I put a Q in the log. Some people say with the high power stations and monster antennas, if they haven't put a log in the Q in the log in the last minute, they'll go ahead and change frequency. As a little pistol, I usually go 2 or 3 minutes before I'll change a frequency. Gives you time to get spotted and everything else. If you're in a multi, this can be set up to show you how many band changes you've made in the hour, but as a single op, you don't care about that. And this thing here, 005537, just talks about different internal things that N1MM has done. It'll also show up here if somebody spots you. They come along and they see you and they spot you. You'll see W1ABC just spotted you on such and such a frequency if you tell N1M to let you know that. Is that enough information, Ron?
Well, it sure is. Thank you. This
Okay.
is initially found that, well, I'll just go hunt through the windows and do a little.
Yeah, what I do, as I've said before, is I'll look at something like that. Oh, I heard something about this particular thing, and I'll go in the NMMM manual, and I'll just read in the manual about it. Because the things I say about it or the things you see might not be everything that you want. I've gotten a heck of a lot of ideas how to do this operating stuff that I'm doing by simply digging in the manual. A lot of these things I figured out for myself from the manual, and then I heard other people talking about it, but I didn't discover it because they put it in, they built it and put it in the program themselves. So, but more and more people are learning these things. You see more and more people switching from unassisted operation to assisted. It used to be 10 years ago, assisted was the unwanted son type of operation. You didn't know anything. Now if you take a look, there's more assisted than unassisted, and the assisted operators are generally killing the unassisted operators because there are far more tools to put log cues in the log, and like I said when I started out, it's more fun to put cues in the log than to simply call CQ for 3 or 4 minutes. And they're doing search and pounce. Oh, I already worked this guy on the VFO. Oh, I already worked that guy. It's just more fun for me to operate assisted. So look in the manual, dig up things. You run across stuff you don't know. Anything else?
Kevin, I have to leave. So thank you for everything you did. It was great.
Good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stay in here and talk with Dr. Jim. You guys are welcome to stay in and get the first few minutes again if you want. Thanks for coming by, people.